Previous videos I've cautioned against making sweeping attacks on social media, although I've done it myself, not sweeping, but I've criticised some aspects of social media. But I've cautioned against sort of just blaming it for all of society's problems because a lot of these things did exist before social media and indeed the wider internet. Um, Things like crime and bullying and all those sort of problems, they weren't a new thing in the 21st century. They've existed before, unfortunately. But I do think we can look at some things as having been influenced by social media, and I think one of them is viral trends, because by their very nature, they require kind of viral viewership. They require people to see what they're doing. I'm talking about the person involved, in order for it to be somehow, well, I don't think it has any point, but to get the galvanization of views, right? I'm going to be talking about a meme that's become viral, and I think it's an example of how dumb this can be in a second. But just to give an example of where that social media influence could be toxic, there was a guy in London a while back, and he was known for getting hits online because he would literally break into people's homes, and he was invited on an interview on either GB News or one of those other stations, and they were expressing how disgusted they were that he was basically just getting cautions from judges. I forget off the top of my head now the guy's name, but he was literally breaking into people's homes in order to get views, and his followers were encouraging him to do it. Now, you might argue that he would be doing that anyway, but it shows the toxic side of that sort of viral influence. With the thing I'm going to talk about, it certainly would require some sort of viral influence, because without it, there'd be no evidence, there'd be no way to see that the person's done that. I'm talking about something I've just came across in literally the last half hour, apparently called Rawdogging. Now, this used to be a rather crude term for having unprotected sex, but in this context, apparently what it involves is taking a long haul flight and totally avoiding any excess distraction at all, whether that be onboard flights, onboard music, sleeping. Apparently, you're not allowed to sleep. You can't even take food. Now, there's been people boasting about this, including the prominent footballer Erling, Haaland Erling, I think he's called. Apparently, he done it and he claimed it was easy. Well, there's a few things. Firstly, how do they actually prove that they do it? Because if you're using some sort of camera or something, then that's extra technology, so they're breaking their own rules. But this is one of the dumbest things I've heard. A Premiership footballer or a professional footballer can, you know, £1,000 flight is going to be nothing to him. But for me, a big question mark here is the financial aspect. You pay a lot of money for a long haul flight. The average for return tickets, it would be average £1,000 to £1,200, I would say, using GP sterling here, pound sterling. So I'm thinking, why the hell pay that amount of money and not take some of the perks that come with it? That's just madness to me. I mean, I've just been on several long haul flights to the Philippines, 7 hours from Newcastle to Dubai, 7 hours from Dubai to Singapore, and another 3 hours from Singapore to Manila. Actually, the last bit kind of dragged because there was no in flight entertainment on that one, so it did drag a bit on both occasions. But I cannot imagine doing those flights without having any food or without watching movies or sleeping or something. Um, that to me is just madness. Why would I pay that money? Um, and it's insanity. So why are people doing this? Is it to get kind of their 15 minutes of fame? Oh, this person successfully. It's just crazy. Even if you're from a wealthy background and you can, disregard a £1,200 or whatever it is, $1,500 flight. So you're not bothered about the financial aspect. That's just what. Why put yourself through that discomfort? Now, I'm all for stoicism. I'm all for people putting ourselves outside our comfort zone, but that to me is just ridiculous. even if you're going to, miss out on all the in-flight entertainment, you're going to miss the food. And the thing is, people say, there's a traditional convention that plain food's not good. Actually, I mean, it may vary from company to company, but I found the Emirates food pretty good. I got beef goulash and red wine on the way back. It's pretty good stuff. Filling, got plenty of variety. Um, that it was a choice between that and another dish. When I say plenty of variety, they have lots of extras as well. Um, but it just seems crazy. I mean, you may be so dog tired that you sleep throughout the whole flight and then you don't watch the movies. That's understandable. But to not sleep, to not watch in-flight entertainment, to not eat, it surely can't be healthy. Even on long haul flights nowadays, they're fairly comfortable. They've quite a lot of leg space, but that to me just seems it cannot be good for one's health to just look dead ahead for 7 hours. And actually, 7 hours is quite modest. Some long haul flights go up to 12 hours. When I flew from Amsterdam to Shanghai, it was 12 hours, or 11 or 12 hours. But that amount of time, basically half a day, without focusing ahead, the only thing you are allowed to look at is in flight map, apparently. Most long haul flights have a sort of little mapping system, a navigation system where you can follow the route of the flight. Apparently, you're allowed to do that. But I'm just putting that out there if anyone's heard of this. I personally would not recommend trying it. It sounds like even if you think you can achieve it, it probably isn't good for your health to, be that focused for that long without kind of having distractions. It just seems to me to be nonsense. Um, and what people will do for a viral trend, it just I've heard of other stupid ones, but this is definitely one of the dumbest I've ever heard of. It's just maybe some people have very good concentration. Maybe they really don't need distractions. What I found actually on the long haul flight on Emirates, I was spoiled for choice. I actually couldn't decide what I wanted to watch. I ended up watching movies that kind of corresponded to the part of the world that I was in at the time. So, for example, as I was getting into the Middle East, I watched an Egyptian movie. Just that's the way I am. It just felt appropriate. It was an Egyptian comedy, actually. Um, as I was approaching the Far East, I watched a Filipino movie, so it was kind of, as I was coming back to Britain, I watched the epic drama Boudica about the Iron Age warrior queen, felt appropriate. But the idea of even 7 hours, which is by no means the longest of long haul flights, um, with no food, no entertainment, and you're not allowed to sleep. I mean, it's one thing sleeping for 7 hours, you may be dog tired. That's very doable. But to do nothing in that time except look forward, that's just why put yourself through that discomfort when you've paid a lot of money for a ticket? It just I don't know. Let me know what you think of this, and to what extent do you think the internet can be blamed, or social media can be blamed for this stuff? Because it has to be asked: would this have happened in the 90s? Would this have happened in the 80s? I'm not sure that it would have, because what sort of tool would people have for proving it? Even today, though, it has to be said, surely that's breaking the rules. If someone, how do they prove that they've done it? They could just start off the flight and film themselves. Oh, look, the screen's off. I'm not sleeping, and then they could just film themselves at the end of the flight. But for all we know, in the middle of the flight, they've watched a movie or had food or something. So how can it even be proven that they've done that? It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, in my humble opinion. Let me know your thoughts about this trend if you've heard of it.